Welcome to Storytime with Double O Kills. This is Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose by Dr. Seuss. I've never read this book before. In fact, this is the first time I've cracked it open. I don't even know what to expect. But we're going to find out together, live, right here on stream. It's a pretty picture right there. In fact, here, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to lower the camera settings just a little bit, so you don't blow out quite so much on those pages. Oh, isn't that nice? Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose. Written and illustrated by Dr. Seuss, Random House, New York. And over here it says, Extra Moose Moss for Helen. Thidwick looks like a little baby moose, kind of a small one there. We'll find out here shortly. TM and copyright 1948, renewed 1975 by Dr. Seuss Enterprises, LP, all rights reserved under international and Pan-American copyright conventions, published in the United States by Random House Incorporated, New York, and simultaneously in Canada by Random House Canada Limited, Toronto. This title is originally cataloged by the Library of Congress as follows: Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose, written and illustrated by Dr. Seuss, pseudonym. That wasn't his real name, is what that means. New York Random House, 1948. One title, PZ8, period 3G276TH48-8129. And then it goes on to the ISBN and library binding. Manufactured in the United States of America. Up at Lake Winnebago, the far north shore, lives a huge herd of moose, about 60 or more, and they all go around in a big happy bunch looking for nice tender moose moss to munch. I have to start that again. Up at Lake Winnebago, the far north shore, lives a huge herd of moose, about 60 or more, and they all go around in a big happy bunch looking for nice tender moose moss to munch. Up at Lake Winnebago, one day they were lunching, just strolling along, enjoying their munching, for the moose moss that day was especially fine. When it happened that Thidwick, the last moose in line, saw a binglebug sitting. The bug called out, "Hey, it's such a long road and it's such a hot day. Would you mind if I rode on your horns for a way?" "Of course not," smiled Thidwick, the Big-Hearted Moose. "I'm happy my antlers can be of some use. There's room there to spare, and I'm happy to share. Be my guest, and I hope that you're comfortable there." So the binglebug picked out a nice, easy seat, and the moose went on looking for moose moss to eat. Well, an hour or so later, the big herd of the bug heard a squeak, and he heard the small voice of a tree spider speak. "I say," said the spider, "you've got a fine place. That moose seems quite friendly, has such a nice face. If I got on too, do you think he would mind?" "Hop aboard," laughed the bug, "and I think you will find that the moose won't object. He's the big-hearted kind." "I accept," said the spider, with joy and delight, and he started a web on the horn to the right. I see somebody in the chat, and I can't say anything because I don't read the chat, but I'm super excited that you're here. Please don't go away. While the spider was spinning, he heard this is back when they used these words, okay. While the spider was spinning, he heard a gay song, which means happy at the time, and a fresh little zinazoo bird came along. He stopped, and he stared, and he chirped, "Well, well, well, what a smart place to build, what a great place to dwell. I've been living on trees ever since I was born, but there's something new. Why not live on a horn? Oh, but here's something new. Why not live on a horn? If there's room there for two, then there's room there for three. There's plenty of room," laughed the bug, "and it's free." Thidwick stopped walking. What was all that talking? These guests had caught Thidwick the moose unawares. "Hey," he called out, "what goes on up there upstairs?" "Oh, goodness. Just building a nest, sir," the zinazoo said, and began yanking hairs out of poor Thidwick's head, and he plucked out exactly 204. "Don't worry," he laughed. "You can always grow more." Then he dozed off to sleep in his fine moose hair nest. This bird," murmured Thidwick, "is sort of a pest, but I am a good sport, so I'll just let him rest, for a host, above all, must be nice to his guest." Besides, now it's getting quite late in the day, and surely tomorrow they'll all go away. But alas, the next morning, the sun's early light brought to Thidwick's sad eyes the most unwelcoming sight. "Meet my wife," said the bird. I was married last night, and perhaps, by the way, I should mention to you that her uncle is coming to live with us too. You're a very fine host, so I knew you'd be willing. Then the uncle, a woodpecker, started in drilling. Yikes. All Thidwick's friends shouted, "Get rid of those pests!" "I would, but I can't," sobbed poor Thidwick. "They're guests." "Guests indeed," his friends answered, and all of them frowned. "If those are your guests, we don't want you around. You can't stay with us because you're just not our sort." And they all turned their backs and walked off with a snort. So, not only is he being taken advantage of by the people that are just carelessly and uncaringly, taking advantage of him. Wow, terrible. I'm tired, leave me alone. But now his friends are turning his back on him because all of these people that he's being taken advantage of are interfering and making things difficult for everybody. Well, Now the big friendless moose walked alone and forlorn, with 4 great big woodpecker holes in his horn. "What holes?" whispered Herman, a squirrel who spied him. "What holes to hide nuts in? Mind if I tried 'em?" "They're yours," called the woodpecker. "Get right inside 'em. This big-hearted moose runs a public hotel. Bring your nuts, bring your wife, bring your children as well." So the whole squirrel family all jumped on, pell-mell. I don't know what pell-mell means. And the very next thing the poor animal knew, a bobcat and turtle were living there too. Now, what was the big-hearted moose going to do? Well, what would you do if it happened to you? You couldn't say scat, because that wouldn't be right. You couldn't shout scram, because that isn't polite. A host has to put up with all kinds of pests, for a host above all must be nice to his guests. So you'd try hard to smile, and you'd try to look sweet, and you'd go right on looking for moose moths to eat. Look at all those moose. But now it was winter, and that wasn't easy, for moose moths get scarce when the weather gets freezy. The food was soon gone, and on the cold northern shore of Lake Winnebago, there just was no more. And all Thidwick's friends swam away in a bunch to the south of the lake where there's moose moths to munch. He watched the herd leaving, and then Thidwick knew he'd starve if he stayed here. He'd have to go, too. He stepped in the water, then, oh, what a fuss. "Stop!" screamed his guest. "You can't do this to us. These horns are our home, and you've no right to take our home to the far distant side of the lake." "Be fair," Thidwick begged, with a lump in his throat. "We're fair," said the bug. "We'll decide this by vote." And this is where pure democracy falls apart. Pure and total unconstrained democracy quickly turns into the masses just overrule everybody else's feelings. And that's why the United States went with a republic system, which some like and some don't. And I know this is kind of obscure and out from left field, but this is why. I mean, those smaller states could be completely run roughshod over and have no rights at all. It would become mob rule, and it would just become a total disaster. And so they designed the states to have a minimum amount of votes, and so on. So this is the kind of situation that our forefathers saw that they wanted to avoid. All those in favor of going, say aye. All those in favor of staying, say nay. "Aye," shouted Thidwick, but when he was done, "Nay!" they all shouted. He lost 11-1. "We win," screamed the guests, by a very large score, and poor starving Thidwick climbed back on the shore. "Then do you know what those pests did?" They asked in some more. They asked in a fox, who jumped in from the trees. They asked in some mice, and they asked in some fleas. They asked a big bear in, and then, if you please, came a swarm of 362 bees. Poor Thidwick sank down with a groan to his knees, and then came something that made his heart freeze. Bullets came zinging right past Thidwick's face. Guns were banging all over the place. Get that moose, Thidwick heard a voice call. Fire again and again and shoot straight one and all. We must get his head for the Harvard Club wall. Thidwick took to his heels with that load on his head. With 500 pounds on his horns, the moose fled. He could have run faster without all those pests, but a host, above all, must be nice to his guests. Up canyon, off cliff, over wild rocky trail, with bullets bouncing around him like hail, up gully through gulch and down slippery sluice, with his hard-hearted guests, raced the soft-hearted moose. Then finally they had him. Because of those pests, he had run out of luck. Because of those guests on his horns, he was stuck. He gasped, he felt faint, and the whole world grew fuzzy. Thidwick was finished completely. Or was he? Finished? Not Thidwick, decidedly not. It's true, he was in a most terrible spot, but now he remembered a thing he'd forgot, a wonderful something that happens each year to the horns of all moose and the horns of all deer. Today was the day Thidwick happened to know that old horns come off so that new ones can grow. And he called to the pests on his horns as he threw them. You wanted my horns, now you're quite welcome to them. Keep them, they're yours. As for me, I shall take myself to the far distant side of the lake. And he swam Winnebago and found his old bunch and arrived just in time for a wonderful lunch at the south of the lake, where there's moose moss to munch. His old horns today, where you knew they would be. His guests are still on him, all stuffed as they should be. Goodness, that's a little bit morbid at the end. And yet, they were happy to let him die. They didn't even care about his well-being enough to keep him alive, or to say, you know what? You can't take care of us, obviously, because you're going to die if you don't get food. They didn't care. All they cared about was their selfish desires, themselves, and nothing else. Now, I'm going to say this. This is probably not a very popular view, because there are some who would say, look, you have to share. You always have to share. Well, he did share, and he was happy to share some. But when he began to be taken advantage of, that's when the problems started to come. And so kindness and understanding the difference between showing kindness and letting yourself being taken advantage of is an important lesson in life. And I cannot stress this enough, because I know plenty of friends who have gone over the edge trying to show kindness to people without understanding the difference between someone who's taking advantage of them and the person who is being kind. You're not doing somebody any favors when you just let them come and sit in your proverbial, horns and don't ask them to contribute or to understand that the rest of the people have feelings as well, and that every individual person deserves certain rights, while others may want things. Those wants cannot supersede the needs of the people. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say, well, I want this or that or the other thing, and I don't want to pay for it. I just want it. And now I've got it. It's mine. You can't take it away from me. While other people need things they're not getting. Now there's a line in the sand there, because that's not advocating. I don't think that's advocating like taking all the money of somebody who works really hard away. That's socialism. I don't think that's what that's advocating. But I think what it is advocating is that people who want can't take from those who have without understanding. Like you can't do it. It's wrong. It's not okay. And eventually you'll end up that way, mired in your own selfishness and suffering the results of your behavior. The consequences of your actions will always find you. It's the way it is.